This day in sports history. It's April 14th, and on this day in 1962, it was an epic performance by one of the all-time NBA greats. This was Game 5 of the finals between the Boston Celtics and the Los Angeles Lakers. It was the second meeting of these burgeoning rivals in the finals, but the first since the Lakers had relocated from the Midwest to the West Coast, and after a 4-game sweep by the Celtics in the 1959 finals, this would be the first classic 7-game series in a long line of them. And here, in the 5th game of the NBA Finals, it would be one of the all-time great performances. The game was in the Boston Garden, and the Garden had a personality that just was not matched around the league. The parquet floor, the raucous Boston crowd, and the championship banners that were already hanging in the rafters. The Celtics were the favorites in the series, but the 6'5" Elgin Baylor seemed to always play his best against Boston.
Some of the better games I've ever had were against the Celtics. In fact, the best games, just about every good, really exciting game, outstanding game, I would say, with the exception of one, the time I scored 71 points, were against the Celtics.
He'd already had a pretty nice series up to this point, scoring 35 in an opening game loss, 39 in a win in Game 3, and he was coming off of a 38-point night in Game 4. But he was getting ready to kick it up a notch. In fact, they'd be talking about Elgin Baylor's performance in this one 24 years later when MJ knocked down a Boston Garden record 63 in a playoff game. Now, an interesting thing about Elgin Baylor in this series, he was still an enlisted man in the Army. He'd only played in 48 games during the regular season.
At the time, I was in the service, and I was playing on the weekends, and so happened during the playoff series against the Celtics. I had about 15 days of leave that I had saved up, and I was able to play in the playoffs.
So to the game we go, and it was a pretty tight one all the way through. Boston had a 2-point lead at halftime, and the teams traded baskets back and forth in the final 2 quarters. With 1:30 to play, the Lakers had a 1-point lead. Baylor had 57 in the game, and he just kept on scoring. Here's Lakers play-by-play legend Chick Hearn with a call from the Garden that night.
Kev just hold it. Now passes to Selby, dribble drive around Cousy, lay it off to Baylor. Baylor into the air, jump, hang, 12-footer, good. Elgin Baylor's got 59 incredible points.
He added a couple of free throws to get the 61 points to go along with his 22 rebounds. It is still the most points ever scored in an NBA Finals game, and until Michael's performance in '86, the most points scored in the Garden. From just about everybody's perspective, it was a great individual game, and it resulted in a 126-121 win and a 3-2 series lead. But Elgin was a little more reserved about the whole deal when talking about it years later.
I really don't know what game is the greatest game, but it was a game that we won, and it's the fact that I was in the Army. I don't think I was in the greatest shape, and just coming and playing on the weekends. It was a tremendous game as far as I was concerned because we won. But I don't know if you could say it was my greatest performance. There are games that I played, I thought that I didn't score as many points, but I had a better all-around game. I thought I played a more complete game.
The series shifted back to L.A. for Game 6. Baylor had 34 in what would be a 14-point series-tying loss, and then scored 41 back in the Garden in an incredible Game 7 defeat in overtime on the 18th, one we're going to talk about in a few days. I'm going to stay in the basketball realm for this quick story, but on this day, just 1 year ago, Boban Marjanović became a hero to the people. So around a lot of NBA arenas, they have a promotion that if an opposing player misses both free throws in a 2-shot foul situation during a certain period of the game, usually fourth quarter, then everybody gets free chicken or something, a sandwich from a local fast food place. Well, on this night, Boban's Houston Rockets were closing out the regular season on the road at the LA Clippers. He was fouled with 4 minutes 44 seconds left in the game, and he stepped to the line for 2 shots. Now, it is important to note that Houston was up 105-97, so just 8 points with a lot of time left, but, they were up. His first attempt looked legit, but it rimmed out. And that's when Boban pointed to the crowd and indicated, "Chicken's on me."
Oh, they're pointing to you. Boban's playing with the crowd. Say, "You want chicken? Here's your job." Oh, he gave him He's a man of the people. He's a man of the people.
He did that on purpose?
He did. He gave out free chicken. Boban.
Boban scored 13 in what turned out to be a 116-105 win for the Rockets. And listen, Boban has always been one of the coolest humans in the NBA, but on this night a year ago, he became a superhero. Hey, real quick, you've heard me talk a lot about the Sterling Soap Company over the past few months, and if you haven't tried out their soaps, I get it. It's not easy changing up your routine. But let me just say, if you give them a try, I'm nearly 100% certain you will have zero regrets. They carry not only bar soap, but shave soap, liquid body soap, body lotions, beard balm, lip balm, and a lot more. Plus, there are myriad scents to choose from. Their products are made with natural ingredients and scented oils, and they are committed to being environmentally conscious. And I always get a handwritten note on my packing slip, so I know it's been checked before shipping, and it's a nice little human touch in a world that seems to be going away from that. Give Sterling Soap a try today at sterlingsoap.com. Tiger Woods missed the Masters this year due to an Achilles injury, and while it would have been highly improbable for a 49-year-old healthy Tiger to contend at the Masters, you just can't ever count him out if he has a club in his hand within sight of the leaders on Sunday at Augusta. Many had long counted him out for ever contending again until he pulled off one of the most memorable victories on this day in 2019. And to do it, he had to pull off something that he had never done before. In his previous 14 major tournament wins, Tiger either led or was tied for the lead entering the final round. He'd never had to make up ground on anybody on the final day. Tiger started the day 2 shots behind Francesco Molinari and in a tie for second with Tony Finau. Now, there were some thunderstorms predicted for the afternoon, and so in an effort to beat the weather instead of the final round pairings, they played as threesomes, so Tiger was in the final group wearing his traditional red shirt on Sunday. The par 3 12th hole was playing 158 yards on this day, and it was the turning point. Standing on the tee, Molinari still had a 2-shot lead over Tiger, but he was about to make a huge mistake. A poor swing led to his ball barely crossing Rays Creek, hitting the severe bank and bouncing back into the water. Tiger played a safe 9-iron onto the green between the 2 bunkers, content to make par at this point, knowing Molinari was looking at least a bogey 4. Instead, Molinari made a double. Tiger 2-putted for a 3, and he was tied for the lead on the backside of the Masters on Sunday. He then took control and the lead at 15, or more like it was handed to him when Molinari dunked another ball into the water and made another double. Tiger made birdie, and he was in the lead, and by the time he was done with 16, he had a nice cushion to play with.
And when he won here the last time in 2005, Tiger Woods had a 1-shot lead, and he stood on his tee. He also had an 8-iron. He does this time as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
He nearly aced it, but by the time his ball came to rest, it was 2 feet below the hole. He rolled that in for another birdie and a 2-shot lead over then second-place chasers Brooks Koepka and Xander Schauffele. After watching Koepka make par and seeing that Schauffele did not make any moves in the final 2 holes, Tiger played 18 conservatively, knowing he could make bogey and still win.
Waited for years. Many doubted we'd ever see it. But here it is. The return to glory.
After he made that putt, he hugged his kids and his mom Tilda. It was his 5th Masters title and his 15th major tournament victory. On this day in 1968, it was one of the all-time unfortunate sports blunders. It was the final round of the Masters. The day started off with 10 players within 3 shots of leader Gary Player. Argentinian Roberto de Vincenzo was one of those nipping at players' heels on this day, and he got his round started off great, holding out from the fairway for an eagle 2 at the first hole, and then he followed that up with a pair of birdies on the second and the third. So, through 3 holes, de Vincenzo was 4 under for the day and 8 under for the tournament. He added another birdie at the 8th to shoot 32 on the front side. He played amen corner 1 under, picked up another birdie at 15, and then a final one at 17. Vincenzo gave a shot back at 18 to shoot a final round 65. Or at least that is what everybody thought. And more on that in just a second. Bob Golby was also having a great day. He birdied 13, 14, and eagled 15. And when he bogeyed 17, he fell back into a tie with Vincenzo, setting up what was to be an 18-hole playoff on Monday. But here's what happened next. Vincenzo's playing partner on this day was Tommy Aaron. When golfers are paired for a round in a tournament, they keep each other's scores throughout the round, and it's the official count. Well, after the round, the golfers exchange cards, go through each hole in a test, and sign the card confirming their score. Well, Aaron had marked Vincenzo down for a par 4 instead of a birdie 3 at the 17th. But Vincenzo did not catch the error, and he signed it. And by rule at this point, if a golfer signed an incorrect card with a score in his favor, a penalty was assessed. If a higher score was recorded on the card, that score stood. So instead of a final round 65, he was credited with a final round 66, 1 shot back of Golby. No 18-hole playoff required. After the error was found and announced, Vincenzo had to sit through an interview in Butler Cabin. And when asked to comment on what happened, he said,
I am professional for many years, and I never think what a stupid I am, because when you play in the tournament, you have to check the scorecard very carefully. And I make a wrong thing today, and just I look the scorecard and I tell the truth. I don't see anything. I don't see any numbers. I feel sorry for myself, and I don't think I got another chance to be so close to win this tournament like this week.
Vincenzo was celebrating his 45th birthday on this day, and he was quite prophetic in his answer because he never challenged at the Masters again. Golby was awarded the Green Jacket, his only major title of his career. Interesting fact, Golby also made a scoring error on his playing partner's card that day, giving Raymond Floyd a par instead of his actual bogey on 16. He corrected it in the scorer's tent before Floyd signed his card. That rule has just recently been modified to allow a 15-minute window for a player to sign for an incorrect score, leave the tent, realize their error, and come back and fix it. In 1960, the Montreal Canadiens won their 5th straight Stanley Cup with a dominating 4-0 win over the Toronto Maple Leafs. It was also a 4-game sweep for the Canadiens, who had also swept through the semifinals. So, if you remember back to the March 17th edition of This Day in Sports History, this is the culmination of the Maurice Richard promise he made to the Canadiens fans back in 1955. Now, he didn't promise 5, just 1. But I can only imagine that each successive one that the Rocket and the Canadiens won, the more satisfied he was to have Clarence Campbell keep handing him the trophy. And if you need some context, go back and re-listen to that episode again. There was no love lost between those two men. On this day in 1964, the first synthetic grass field was installed at a school in Providence, Rhode Island. This was what would soon be called AstroTurf, but it would not garner that name until after it was installed as the playing surface at the Houston Astrodome in 1966, after the real grass they'd put down died. The idea of artificial turf grew, pun definitely intended, out of an idea to replace urban playgrounds with a green grass-like fiber. A study done by recruits during the Korean War showed a fitness disparity between urban guys and rural guys, with the rural fellas a little more fit. And it was thought that it had something to do with there being green grass in the country and concrete and brick in the city. So the thought was to build a carpet that was durable, could drain water and be inflammable, and then install these in cities all over the country. Once they had a prototype, they found a willing participant in the Moses Brown School in Providence, Rhode Island, and completed installation on this day in '64 of what they called at the time chemgrass. There was only one problem. The artificial turf was too expensive to manufacture to make it viable for urban playgrounds. And that's when the Astrodome came in. When the Astrodome was built, it had a glass roof and it allowed natural light in, which allowed for the natural grass that they had installed to grow. But players could not see the path of the ball with the glass panes in the ceiling, and so they darkened them, which in turn killed the real grass. And so that's when they installed Chemgrass in the Astrodome, and then Chemgrass got rebranded AstroTurf. And on this day in 1910, President William Howard Taft threw out the first pitch at the Washington Senators game, starting a tradition that lasted for 6 decades. However, Taft threw his first ball from the stands to pitcher Walter Johnson, figuring he's going to need it soon. The tradition of the current president throwing out the first pitch at a Senators game lasted until 1972. In 73, the Senators became the Texas Rangers, but the tradition lasted a few more years, with Nixon and Ford traveling to other ballparks. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. If you've ever heard the phrase, keep it under your hat, meaning to keep something secret, you may be interested to know that it comes from Abraham Lincoln. Not that he said it himself, but others did, in reference to him, because Lincoln was known to keep important documents in his iconic stovepipe hat. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.